Could we have everyone take their seats, please?
Yeah.
The Morgan Taylor table's well behaved.
What's that?
So the Morgan Taylor table's well behaved. They're all in their seats.
Oh, and look at that powerhouse crowd you have. I got nobody in my table.
Folks, could we have everyone take their seats so we can get the program started? Thank you.
At some point I should just start talking, right?
I think they're starting to get it now.
Should I start?
Sure.
Okay, folks, we're going to get started. Good morning. Or good afternoon, I guess it is at this point, and welcome everybody to the 20th Anniversary Research Roundtable Luncheon. Looks like we have just about everybody seated. My name is Becky Robertson, and this is my co-chair, Hank Plain. We'd both like to welcome each of you and thank you all for coming. Every year, as leaders in the life sciences industry, we join together in support of the American Heart Association. The research that we are funding is the foundation for some of the very companies that we all are involved in helping to create. Joining us today are many of the researchers who are direct recipients of these funds. Unfortunately, every 39 seconds, someone dies from heart disease or stroke. These scientists are on the front line in their labs, making advancements that will reverse that statistic and lead to improved patient care. Their work will save the lives of many affected by our nation's #1 and #4 killers, heart disease and stroke. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Research Roundtable, I'm amazed at how far this event has come in that short amount of time. This unique event has single-handedly raised nearly $8 million towards the life-saving mission of the American Heart Association. I mean, that is remarkable. It began 20 years ago with a small group of just 140 attendees at the Sharon Heights Country Club, and it raised $48,000. To where it is today, at the only venue in the entire Bay Area that can handle a crowd of 700 attendees, the Hyatt. And we will share with you shortly our fundraising total, but I assure you it is far more than $48,000. We would not be where we are today if it were not for the continued support from a very special group of volunteers. At this moment, both Hank and I would like to say thank you to our 2013 Executive Committee and ask that all the members of the committee please stand and be recognized. These volunteers have worked tirelessly to ensure the success of this event, and thanks to this committee, Hank and I are thrilled to report that as of today, we have raised $634,000. Not that we're competitive or anything, but you should know that is significantly more than last year. Thank you also to our VIP sponsors, Abbott Vascular, El Camino Hospital, and the Fogarty Institute for Innovation. Our event sponsors, Genentech and Stanford Hospital and Clinics, and our patron sponsors, New Enterprise Associates and Warburg Pincus. As I'm sure you know, this happens with a lot of behind-the-scenes activity as well, and we'd like to thank the folks at Wilson Sonsini, Goodrich & Rosati and Meryl, who worked tirelessly on our behalf to print materials year after year. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Toby, and thank you to our first-year ever wine sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank.
So last year, we began an important new initiative for the Research Roundtable campaign called the Core Vitae Society. This philanthropic society is a group of individual donors making gifts of $5,000 or more directly towards the mission of the American Heart Association. This year, we've seen the Core Vitae Society surpass all of our expectations under the extraordinary leadership of Mike Carusi and Bill Facto. Mike and Bill have led the campaign to raise over $175,000 from individual donors, and that's a $50,000 increase from last year. We welcome 6 new members to the Core Vitae list this year. This particular group had such an impact that the American Heart Association CEO, Nancy Brown, and National Chairman Ron Haddock flew out to the Bay Area from Dallas, Texas to meet the members at our annual Core Vitae reception that was held Wednesday evening. We were also honored to have San Francisco 49ers head coach and 2012 NFL Coach of the Year, Jim Harbaugh, join us for this wonderful evening at Bill and Lydia Facto's home. At this moment, we'd like to recognize our Core Vitae members and ask them to stand up. Please thank us in joining the following, in celebrating the following individuals. Membership in Core Vitae gives each donor the opportunity to take an active role in the mission of the AHA and experience the impact that their gift will make on the lives of those affected by cardiovascular diseases and stroke. Each of you will have an opportunity later in the program to join Core Vitae if you're interested.
Next, we would like to welcome Charlie Huntington Jr., the incoming chairman of the American Heart Association Science and Technology Accelerator Program, for a brief update on this exciting new venture. Charlie Huntington is a first vice president and investment officer with the Huntington Krause Investment Group of Wells Fargo Advisors in Burnwin, Pennsylvania. Charlie leads a team focused on investments for leaders in the life sciences community. Since 1992, he's worked in similar capacities at Prudential Securities and Smith Barney prior to joining Wells Fargo Advisors in 2009. He has served on numerous AHA committees and the recipient of many AHA honors, including the Advocacy Award in 2008 and the Distinguished Service Award in 2009. He is also a founding member of the BioStrategy Partners, a not-for-profit providing advice to young life science entrepreneurs in the Philadelphia area. Please welcome Charlie Huntington.
First, congratulations to Becky and Hank for chairing this Research Roundtable. What a tremendous event. It's a great example of how we've been able to put over $3.5 billion into research in the last 4 decades. Thank you for allowing me to highlight the Science and Technology Accelerator Program within the American Heart Association. As I say, we've put over $3 billion into research, and many of you have been a part of that success. But we all know that many great inventions are languishing and not moving to market. So in November 2011, the Heart Association launched the Science and Technology Accelerator Program. Specifically, the accelerator is designed to invest in game-changing innovations to move these innovations from the bench to the bedside. The program is led by Dr. Ross Tonkins. He has 20 years as a cardiologist and an additional 15 years of early-stage investment experience. Dr. Tonkins has helped to place $500 million in venture funding while he was at Quintiles. We also have Mark Germano, who leads our revenue generation efforts. Mark has nearly 35 years of not-for-profit experience and has personally raised nearly $700 million during his career for not-for-profits. Both of these gentlemen will be on hand to answer specifics about the program at the conclusion of today's luncheon. And I'd ask both of them to stand right now. Thank you. Now we're going to have a short video that will describe this program to you.
I know what I'm going to die from. Both of my parents died from cardiovascular disease at a relatively young age.
American Heart Association would like to put both heart disease and stroke out of business.
I believe in what the Heart Association is and does because they promote wellness.
We need to find a way to bring great innovations from bench to bedside where they can truly impact outcomes.
The Heart Association is a cause that's very important because if the heart doesn't function, you don't function.
In order to save lives and improve the health of not only us, but our children and our grandchildren, we need to find innovative ways to accelerate the discovery and translation of science.
There are many technologies, many scientific innovations that occur in the laboratory that never really make it out of the laboratory.
We believe that there's a lot of ideas out there that with a little bit of support could make it through this so-called valley of death.
The valley of death is the point in time from a funding standpoint where scientists who've done their experiments have run out of research funding and their science sits because nobody is there to run the second leg of the funding relay.
And one of the things that we as founders of Cytovast realized early on is that we had something that might fall into that category. We applied for them. Fortunately, were accepted by the American Heart Association, and so we hope to leap the valley of death with their help.
American Heart Association started this concept of the Science Accelerator to help move good ideas that are vetted by volunteers in the organization that are not only science volunteers but are also business volunteers to kind of move these ideas from this early development stage through this process. Overall, I think this is absolutely essential if we're going to improve the overall cardiovascular health of people in this nation, so that any resources that are generated or revenue that's generated from a commercialized idea will come back to the organization to support more research or to support more science acceleration.
I hope that everyone will feel as I do of how important it is to help people that have heart disease and to prevent heart disease.
Maybe I can find out early on and sort of change the life history of my family and live to be older and live to see my grandchildren.
There's nothing here. Thank you, Charlie. And now we'd like to introduce a couple of very special friends to the American Heart Association. Please welcome Stanford cardiologist Dr. Josh Knowles and Dan Weingarten.
Thank you very much. My name is Josh Knowles, and I'm a cardiologist and a researcher at Stanford, and I take care of patients with familial forms of heart disease and Stanford Center for Inherited Cardiovascular Disease. I'm very happy to be here, returning the favor to the AHA because they've supported me at every stage of my research career so far. And as many of you might have heard, the government is in a bit of a financial bind these days, which has resulted in historically low levels of funding for research. In the last couple of years, only about 7% of academic grants submitted to the NIH have been funded. And contrast this to the historical norm of about 25%. You can see how desperate the situation really is. There's a real threat that a whole generation of young and talented scientists, some of whom are sitting at your tables, might be lost. And you can see what a vital lifeline the AHA has been to researchers like me. And this has been a historical role that the AHA has done. They funded work from over 12 Nobel laureates. They funded the development of drugs like statins, devices like pacemakers, and stents, et cetera. It's also a real pleasure to introduce Dan Weingarten and his family, particularly his wife, Chris Mehta. I got to know them pretty well over many months during his health crisis. Some of you may know Dan from his role as a judge pro tem in Contra Costa or Alameda counties, or Chris Mehta from her role in some of these local companies highlighted on this slide. Like many of our patients, Dan's first contact with us was through our excellent nursing staff, and one of them related their first telephone conversation that they had with him to me, and that's shown here. Hello, I'm Dan Weingarten. Can you help me take and store a sample of my DNA so that when I die, my family will have it? And I think this is an incredibly powerful slide, and it really captures the essence of the message today, that there's nothing that's more important to us than our families, and we'll go to great lengths to prevent anything bad happening to them. Of course, in a clinic that specializes in familial forms of heart disease, one of the first things that we do is take a family history at the initial visit, and this is Dan's family tree, and the slash marks mean somebody has passed away. And I think the most important message about this slide is that within every family tree is an actual family, and that many types of heart disease run in families, and I'm sure that many of you have been personally affected by heart disease. As you will hear, a specific type of heart disease runs in Dan's family and was affecting Dan in profound ways. And we used all the tricks in the book to try to make him feel better, and he's going to tell you more about that journey. I'm not going to give away his story any more than saying that we tried desperately to identify the genetic cause of his heart disease, and so far have been unable to do so. So despite massive progress that we've made, there's still a lot of work to do, and so we appreciate your help in that regard. And with that, I give you Dan Weingarten.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Knowles, and thank you to the American Heart Association for putting on this important event. And I'm honored that you have chosen me to tell my story to this distinguished audience about my personal struggle with heart disease. My story actually begins with my brother. We were living in Los Angeles. My brother was always far more physically fit than me. He was my twin. He ran marathons. He mountain biked. He loved to surf. He was an accomplished engineer with advanced degrees in mathematics and computer science from Berkeley and from USC. Yet at the age of 48, he began having chest palpitations. At the time, his internist just told him, drink less coffee. These symptoms persisted. We went to a cardiologist together. The cardiologist ran some tests, and I'll never forget the look on the cardiologist's face when he said that, because both my brother and I thought he had something that wasn't serious. And he told us that my brother had dilated cardiomyopathy. We had no idea what that was. He explained that although my brother's coronary arteries were completely healthy, it was his heart muscle that was affected by this disease, especially the ventricles and the atria, and it would cause the chambers of the heart to slowly, they would stretch, thin, and the heart would become much enlarged. We learned that a much enlarged heart doesn't pump blood very well, and it subjects the person to dangerous arrhythmias. We were also told the disease was progressive. There was no cure. Devastating to our family, this news, especially to my then 14-year-old son Matthew and his sister, 8-year-old Sophie. They truly loved their uncle. They adored my brother, and my brother was crazy about them. His disease worsened in the next few years, and eventually he had to have a pacemaker and a defibrillator. In 2001, he collapsed at home. The defibrillator shocked him many times, but to no avail. He lingered in the ICU for 5 days. He had suffered during this period massive brain damage. I had no choice, but I knew it would have been his wish to be taken off life support. When he died, I never had a clear idea of what caused his disease. His cardiologist told me that he thought it was likely to be viral, but that it was possible there was a genetic cause. In 2001, there was no test. There was no genetic test for dilated cardiomyopathy. In the ensuing 8 years, everything seemed normal with my heart. However, in 2009, I began to have the same chest palpitations that my brother had so vividly described to me 13 years earlier. I too got the same diagnosis, dilated cardiomyopathy. There was now no mistaking the fact that our disease was genetic. During the course of my disease, I had to medically retire. It was very much a rerun of my brother's. We both medically retired from jobs we loved. He as a computer science software engineer, and me as a trial attorney for the state of California. I could no longer do this job. I was totally and utterly exhausted. For those of you fortunate not to have ever had serious cardiovascular disease, it's hard to overstate how it affects every aspect of one's life. Worse for me was to see the effect on my wife and kids, who watched me suffer as I watched them suffer, observing my energy and my capabilities decline. Although unspoken, I knew they were convinced I would soon die. So was I. I was equally distressed that I may have given potentially dangerous genes to my kids. Eventually, I too received a pacemaker and a defibrillator, which on one horrendous day, my heart rate went up to well over 200 beats per minute. It was a frightening experience, and mercifully, the defibrillator in my case worked. But my doctor told me, and he was very candid, that in the next few years, that the defibrillator, as my heart worsened, would most likely not save my life. I had, at that point, only one other option, a heart transplant. And given the chronic shortage of donor organs, I was extraordinarily lucky to receive my new heart in October of 2011. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the donor. He was 25 years old. He suffered a catastrophic injury in a car crash on Highway 99. He was taken to the hospital. He lingered there for a week on life support. His brain was irreparably damaged. His mother and father, she is a nurse. She knew all too well that was not what he would want, and she made the decision to have his life support stopped. But they made a further courageous decision. They decided that their tragedy, the worst that anybody could imagine as a parent, okay, that they were going to make sure that the tragedy, okay, there was some good would come out of it. Okay. So they decided to donate his organs. And in the year after my heart transplant, I got a very powerful and moving letter from them asking if they could meet me. And we, all of us, my family and their family, we all met at their home. The mother, a nurse, asked if she could listen to her son's heart for one last time. Okay. I can only tell you it was an amazing moment to be held by this young man's mother with a stethoscope to my chest. We both cried. It's hard to put into words what getting a second chance at life is like when death was so close and seemed so certain. I can tell you it's amazing joy to feel just normal again, to do the things that you take for granted, the everyday things that you love to do, walk, read, hike, go to the beach, work, all of that we sometimes take for granted. I got it all back. I don't take it for granted. And I've resumed work now as a temporary judge in several, Contra Costa County and Alameda County, where the courts are grossly undermanned, and I feel honored to be able to do the work. I'm grateful for my second chance. I'm blessed. However, I realize that I want to stress that my story is overshadowed by those who currently suffer and who will die from cardiovascular disease because the current state of knowledge does offer them nothing in the way of effective treatment. Last year, the American Heart Association was able to award $117 million to research projects. However, they lacked the additional $138 million to fund equally meritorious projects from other research scientists. Research scientists like my doctor, Dr. Knowles, are committed. They are committed to advancing the state of knowledge in cardiology, but they absolutely rely on this funding. They cannot do their work without this money. In fact, one has to wonder whether one of these unfunded projects could have led to the next major cardiovascular breakthrough. These breakthroughs indeed save lives, and they are the cornerstones of the life sciences industry. For my children, new genetic markers are now being used to track their cardiovascular health. These were not available 10 years ago. Also, we owe our children and future generations the benefits that flow from paying for research now. Think of the hundreds of thousands of people currently alive today who suffer from cardiovascular disease, and I will tell you in the end stage, it is horrendous, and I was there. I know how that feels, and I know how desperate I was. And those people, that's why I'm here. It's not for me. Those people need their breakthrough as well, and they need your help. I urge you to be generous in your support of the indispensable work of the American Heart Association. My wife, Chris, and I are making our pledge right now and we personally support the AHA and their life-saving mission. At your tables, each of you will find a personal pledge card, and I believe they're in yellow and they're in front of every plate. Everyone in this room, if you could give at least $250, together we'd be able to contribute an additional $125,000 to the American Heart Association. As Chris and I make our pledge, we ask that each of you take a moment to make your contribution. Please consider the many lives your contribution will one day save. If you would also like to join the Cor Vitae Society, I believe those cards have a place you can mark off for Cor Vitae. Those are gifts of at least $5,000 or more. You'll find a stack of cards in the center of the table, and there's a special incentive, I'm supposed to tell you this too, that those of you who make a personal gift today will be entered into a drawing for a case of wine from Thomas Fogarty Winery and Vineyards. Once you've made your commitment, raise your card in the air, and AHH volunteers will come and collect them and give you a red ribbon pin. Thank you for your time and your generous support of the American Heart Association.
Yeah, I will. Okay. Okay.
So for any of the donors that just filled out a card, if you'd please raise them so we can have the staff pick them up. We missed anybody?
Wow, thank you, Dan. That was an incredible and very touching story. Before we came into the luncheon, I was talking with Dr. Knowles, and he did point out to me that the thing that was most important to him is that today we raise more money in our Day of Giving pledge than his colleague and fellow physician friend raised last year. So let's hope that Dr. Knowles' objective is achieved today. It is our pleasure to introduce as well today our keynote speaker, President and Chief Executive Officer of Stanford Hospital and Clinics, Amir Dan Rubin. Amir Dan Rubin has served in this position since January of 2011, so he is a relative newcomer to the Bay Area community, but certainly not a newcomer to the healthcare field. Prior to Stanford, Amir was Chief Operating Officer for the UCLA healthcare system, responsible for the operation of the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, Mattel Children's Hospital at UCLA, the Resnick Neuropsychiatric Hospital at UCLA, Santa Monica UCLA Medical Center, and the Orthopedic Hospital. Prior to UCLA, Amir has served as the Chief Operating Officer for Stony Brook University Hospital in New York, as Assistant Vice President of Operations for Memorial Hermann Hospital in Texas, and as Director of Business Development for the Memorial Hermann Healthcare System. Amir was also previously worked as a healthcare management consultant with APM in San Francisco. Amir earned a master's degree in business administration and a master's degree in health services administration from the University of Michigan, and a bachelor's degree in economics with a minor in business from UC Berkeley. Hank and I, as well as Dana, had the pleasure of meeting with Amir about 6 months ago as we were talking with him about this speech, and we found him to be an incredibly capable, knowledgeable, and inspirational leader for Stanford, and we look very forward to having him join us today. Thank you, Amir.
Great. Well, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. And this is going to go a lot more smoothly if I had a clicker. Perfect. Well, it's an absolute pleasure for me to be here. And let me just also, on behalf of all the faculty and staff and researchers at Stanford, thank the American Heart Association. And moreover, thank all of you in this room. The work that the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association does really does help spearhead the new innovations. As you may know, there's not a lot of funding coming out of DC these days, and it's always been the case that the American Heart Association will go in early. Like many of you in the room, they're early stage investors. They see a good idea, they see good people, they seed those efforts, and that often allows for bigger follow-on grants later on. So the work is tremendously important, and I thank you all for being such great supporters of the American Heart Association. I like to start my overview of how Stanford's making an impact in heart care with our vision. So we have a pretty big vision, a pretty big goal. We say our vision is healing humanity through science and compassion, one patient at a time. And we're at a table here with my Stanford colleagues. We got a lot to do when we get back to the office because we have all of humanity to heal. But at some levels, we think we've started to make a dent in this, and I'll talk a little bit about how we feel we're doing that. And really our approach to making a dent in this, we say, is our Stanford operating system. Kind of like a computer runs an operating system, how are we going to run our organization so that we can make an impact on this bold vision? So what we do is we cascade down from this vision of healing humanity and a mission as an academic medical center, we say, is to care and educate and discover, through this strategy, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, about how do we deliver leading edge and coordinated care. How do we do great discovery in translational medicine, but how do we deliver it to patients in a highly coordinated fashion? And if anybody in the room has ever had to interact with the healthcare system kind of writ large, it isn't known for its coordination. But I think the next few years, the breakthroughs on the discovery and translational side, as well as how we're reorganizing care, will truly help us achieve this vision. And then from a management perspective, we cascade that down into our balanced scorecard, if you will, of initiatives, and our lean performance improvement system. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. So we say we want to help create the leading edge and then deliver it in a highly coordinated fashion. And let's jump into this a little bit. So we start with great discovery and translation. And over the last 50 years, we're a relatively young institution. We've been able to make a dent, and maybe a decent-sized dent, in that vision of healing humanity. As a medical center, we have 6 Nobel Prizes. One of our physicians, Dr. Brian Kabilko, was one of the co-winners